Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mike McCarthy. I'm the senior reporter for Front Office Sports, and I'm delighted to be with you here today for a great panel on how artificial intelligence is engaging fans and disrupting the market. We got a great panel. On the far left, we have Ty Barnes, Global Head of Sports at Google. Second from the far left, we have Matt Graham, Senior Vice President of Direct-to-Consumer at Tennis Channel. Directly to my left, we have Patrick Mostboeck, Senior Vice President of Fan Engagement at Sportradar. And in the middle, we have John Kosner, the former ESPN executive turned consultant and founder of Kosner Media. In a couple of days, we're literally going to see one of the most amazing uses of artificial intelligence in sports. We're going to have an artificial Al Michaels giving you highlights from Paris. I've listened to him. I've seen the presentation from NBC. It's amazing. I couldn't tell the difference between the real Al Michaels and the AI Al Michaels. So John, let me start with you. AI is coming to the Olympics. What do you think?
Well, you'll be able to tell the difference because the real Al Michaels will be complaining about his hotel reservation. So we'll have to see whether or not the AI Al Michaels is unhappy that he's not at the Ritz-Carlton or at the Four Seasons. I think the Olympics highlight execution with Al Michaels is fascinating, high profile. It raises a lot of issues that we have when we think about AI, because on the one hand, it's amazing to take this one sort of iconic voice and put it across highlights, but it also worries people that we're substituting an artificial voice for real people doing it. So it raises a bunch of things. It will probably be well done. I just was going to say that the context of the panel and what Bashad talked about in the opener is AI really is the brain increasingly for where sports technology is going. And AI in sports, unlike a lot of what you see, there are real products being built that are going to be the part of big businesses. It's not just about efficiency or saving money.
Yeah. And also, I'm sure Al will sneak in some remarks about the betting lines.
Yeah, exactly.
The artificial Al.
Yeah.
Ty, obviously, Google is one of the world's leading technology masters. What do you think?
Well, it actually reminds me a lot of when I was at YouTube. So I was in YouTube in the early days, and we had just released a feature called live streaming. And I worked with the NWSL, which is the Women's Pro Soccer League, in the year they launched. At that time, they didn't have full distribution. It was added later that season. So I worked with a few of the clubs and presidents to stream on YouTube. And we were streaming for free. There was, it was just get us the stream and we can distribute it to the world. And the problem they had was the production costs, right? Like 99% of it was getting that production done, producing it, getting it to us. And I think what AI does, it completely changes that and starts to democratize like content distribution. If you think about it through AI, maybe they could film the events better, more efficiently, have announcer voices doing play-by-play, kind of if you've ever played EA Sports, like I forgot what they call it now, but EA Football Club, where they do AI announcements. Like all these things are now tangible. So you can have women's leagues, you can have international leagues, you can have kind of these tail and torso sports able to produce content and distribute it to fans that they could never reach before. And that's exciting. And by the way, I don't think this is competing with ESPN. It's not competing with major broadcasts. It's just almost like bringing that ability down more through computer technology, which is pretty exciting.
Matt, as a fellow TV executive yourself, what do you think about what NBC is trying to pull off here?
I think my big question is what problems are we trying to solve with AI for the fan in particular, right? So in this case, I don't know exactly. I think generally we're thinking about how do we tell stories better that are more specific, more personalized? How do we enrich the content? How do we enrich the live experience? How do we help people enjoy the sport more, whether they're new to the sport or they're super fans? So I'm not. So in this particular case, I'm like, well, what part of that spectrum does this play on?
Right.
And I think there are also like concerns about authenticity, right? Like that's something that's very important for both the broadcaster and the fans' experience of the sport. So it's very easy to lose credibility if you sort of with these. It feels like right now a lot of these AI stunts are really just sort of marketing gimmicks to get attention, and that's fine. That makes sense for where we are in the sort of development of the tech. But the real value is going to be delivering something that solves problems for consumers.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, as John has said to me before about AI, where's the beef? You know, you have to go more than just this kind of stunt type stuff and really show how it's driving fan engagement. Pat, I want to ask you, I mean, obviously Al Michaels probably uttered the most famous line in U.S. sports media history. Do you believe in miracles? At the 1980 Olympics, and here they are bringing them back for the Paris Olympics. What do you think?
Well, I have to admit, I wasn't born in 1980, so it's kind of a new statement to me.
Pretty well known here.
Perfect. So I think what I'm really excited about is just all the opportunity that is in front of us, and I think as Bejat kind of divided it, I think there is the operational challenges that can be overcome and what kind of is in the back end, but on the other side, and that's what I'm not for the efficiency. I'm really for like what is the engagement and how can we do better in the end in better engaging fans, and I think in Sportradar world, obviously a lot punters. How can we do that better? And I think as we said before, I think there's just lots and lots of opportunity, and I think that just needs to be looked at and gone after step by step.
Yeah. One of the things we all saw this year is the rise of women's basketball. Caitlin Clark, I mean, he's a sports media writer. It was fascinating to write about all the different things that ESPN and different networks were doing to zero in on Caitlin Clark and give you different viewpoints. If you just wanted to watch Caitlin Clark, you could. I mean, Matt, is there an athlete like that in tennis who can be that kind of gateway to bring new fans in?
Right, absolutely. So I think right now Coco Gauff is our gateway drug into the sport, and so you have a lot of sort of casual fans. You know, tennis is an interesting sort of culture, sort of an interesting cultural phenomenon, in that you have a lot of people who will literally dress like tennis players, right? Dress like the players themselves, but aren't even actually watching the sport.
Yeah.
So a lot of casual fans, and she's an entry point. So the big question is how do we take that interest and turn that person into a consumer of the sport, a real fan? And so I think AI presents, if you sort of scale that out across the hundreds of top players in the pro tours, how do you create stories and context around that player exactly here in this point in time in their tour and in their career that create stakes and stories that people can relate to and get them into becoming fans? So that sort of like scale and timeliness is what AI, this sort of the promise that AI has, that solves problems for why do I care? Why should I follow this person? What's going on here? Tennis is sort of a great example because it's a very arcane sport governed by multiple governing bodies across multiple continents, time zones. It's going on all year round, and it's got this devilish scoring system, and and the way that we film it is hard to see what's going on. You're sort of very removed. So there's a lot of opportunity, I think, to make the sport a lot easier to digest and enjoy.
Yeah. John, I know you're a tennis fan and a tennis buff. Is there a big opportunity for AI to disrupt, as he said, which is kind of a white shoe sport, which adheres to tradition very much?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking in the green room, for those of you who watch the Grand Slam tournaments, the Hawkeye instant replay in tennis is, for me, the best execution. And it takes advantage of data, it's quick, it's real time. The promise of AI that's really powerful is in personalization. So with Tennis Channel, for instance, do they have the opportunity to use these tools to get you to better know these players? That's going to be a big emphasis, obviously, within the Olympics. The fact that tennis plays in the Olympics, I think, is a big positive.
Yeah.
I noticed also, if you look at ESPN, the scoreboards now on ESPN for WNBA, Caitlin Clark's statistics line is shaded. And that's kind of a precursor to what's coming, where you can take this data and tell a story of an individual that you care about. So to me, in tennis, it's really a visibility issue. Can we raise the awareness? Because there's a Coco Gauff in every country. That's what's kind of amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And if you haven't heard, Caitlin set another TV record today with the ratings for the WNBA All-Star Game. I don't know if anybody watched the telecast. I thought it was a fantastic game. More entertaining in many ways than the NBA All-Star Game. So just a huge opportunity there. Ty, I want to talk to you about the biggest league out there, because the NFL has been getting into this, particularly with its Amazon package last year on Thursday Night Football, feeding in data, trying to use artificial intelligence to personalize the telecast. What was your viewpoint on that?
I think it's great. I think more data is better. I think the way that fans want to consume content, consume sports, is now shifted from just watching the action to also thinking about fantasy, thinking about gambling, thinking about other viewpoints. And to me, AI opens up the ability to pull out insights from the match and tell a story in a way that might not have been possible before, or even to help fans get involved in these other aspects of it. Not football related, but the Open Championship was this past weekend, and I was interested in getting a little action on the event. And I listened to a bunch of podcasts, read some articles, and had my picks. But I'm just not familiar with golf betting, and it's a little bit confusing with, like, do I pick outright winners, top five? So anyway, I just went in an LLM and asked for a basic strategy on how to do that, how to, like, spread risk around, and it actually answered that. Unfortunately, it didn't tell me not to pick Rory McIlroy as my top pick, which, maybe there's other models that will be able to do that in the future. But it helped me as a fan, and I probably watched more. I love golf, but I probably watched more golf this weekend because I was invested in that.
And the beauty of Google's system is that it's like the sports algorithm. So they can take a look at what you're looking for, what you're querying, and that builds their profile of what you're interested in.
Right.
So that's sort of the next generation of personalization. Everyone's going to have to try to keep up with that.
Yeah. Pat, you talked about personalization being one of the keys in this future. How do you do it? And is there a role for sports betting in this?
Yeah, I definitely think so, and I think adding along to what Ty just said, I think what we see more and more, and what we recognize is, I think, if we look at streaming or broadcasting itself, I think times are probably over where there's just a one-fits-all approach to this is the broadcast and that's it. And for us, from a sports betting perspective, it obviously means, okay, how can we tie our subject matter, sports betting, into the respective audience? On the one side, in sports streaming, where obviously, if you then introduce sports betting, it goes to the attention of probably more casual bettor. So you can't have all your deep betting markets right away, front and center, pushed in front of the audience. You need to have a more kind of beginner approach to the thing. Whereas if you go, and that's, for example, what we have now done in ATP, we've really built out a betting themed broadcast on a sports book, which means that you don't just stay on a surface level in terms of, okay, here's some data points that we throw at you and we show at you, but it goes into the depth of, okay, what takes a punter to not only bet on game, set, match, but to bet probably on speed or shot count or any advanced metrics that are out there, but have not gotten any attention yet. And I think that's where we see quite a sizable opportunity for the future.
So that's you're talking about fans who are very engaged, but as Carla mentioned, what about the casual fans? How do you use AI to get them engaged? Ty, you want to weigh in?
I think there's many ways. I think John talked about a little bit. It's the storytelling that can come out of these events to better connect with fans. I was in London this past spring, and all the other people on my team flew out a day early, so I was by myself and really wanted to go to a football match. So I got myself a single ticket to Queen's Park Rangers, QPR, in the supporter section. I got there, was excited. I go to sports events a lot by myself, so I'm okay with it when I travel. And all of a sudden, I was just filled with, the air was like filled with like these guttural sounds, like everybody's screaming and their chants. It was almost a call and response. And I didn't know any of it, and I felt very out of place, was a little like, I've heard about the football culture in England, and so I was a little nervous, and I actually got on my LLM and kind of like looked up what these people were saying and like famous chants and history, and it spat out in 10 seconds everything I needed to know, and before you know it, I was joining along right with them. So it was something I felt like very out of place, and then it completely turned the experience around for me and had fun. So I think it just helps bring sport down to people and helps them get even more engaged.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, with Fox's coverage of the Euro and the Copa, one thing I thought was really interesting and impressive was they took the first 5 minutes of each match and they streamed them on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, with then links and connections after if you wanted to watch more. And I thought that was like a modern pregame show. And then the intelligence that those platforms can gather that these viewers are interested in the sport, that's sort of a new way to attract casual fans to promote something where people are. And I don't know exactly how much crossover there was, but I thought that was really savvy marketing on the part of Fox. And of course, both those tournaments were very highly rated, especially the finals of both of them.
Yeah, that's a great point. Matt, let's talk about the ultimate goal of AI. Is it to put the fan literally on the court, in the arena, on the fields? Where do you see it going? What's the end game?
Sure. Yeah, I think proximity. Closeness to the experience, feeling like you're there, and part of that, and then enriching it with understanding stories and stakes, like I was saying before. So I think it's really about opening up as much expertise, like delivering as much insight and expertise, and all of that is built on. It's all built on data, but it's the promise is how that translates into a product and into a final experience. Yeah. I think what I've been thinking about recently is there are a number of companies and some top tennis players who have these teams that use computer vision to analyze their competition, right? And this is becoming more and more prevalent. And so that's sort of the precursor to everything that AI is going to be able to offer to the masses, which is this very, very specific, personalized view into a particular sporting, like a moment in time, two competitors, whether it's teams or players, are going to face off. And what's going to happen, and what should I be looking for? So this is already happening on a very bespoke and human level with these teams using the core technology. But when any fan has access to that, from a betting perspective to just a fan perspective, it gives you such an incredible and compelling way of looking at sport that didn't exist at all just a few years ago. So I think that's an interesting thing to see how the players themselves are sort of the leading edge of this. Yeah. And how that rolls out to the masses.
Yeah. Ty, sports is a copycat business. We all know, like if something happens in one league that's successful, everybody grabs it and picks it up. Exactly, that flying camera that you see in the NFL actually came from the original XFL, many years ago. What is something you're seeing out there technology-wise that you think is really going to pop and people are going to copy it?
Well, I think it actually, something that Matt was talking about, I was thinking about how AI has kind of enabled these new technologies that all of us can use, right? Like my brother he's trying to get better at tennis and playing leagues, and he has, I think, a camera or his phone that he can hang on the court, and it analyzes him just serving and kind of gives him feedback on how he's doing. I think I've seen high school kids do it, and they play each other, and at the end they get a readout of like how they performed against AI models. And Golf Arcos is doing it, Whoop. So it's really like allowing fans, people to get more engaged and to actually like do the sports themselves. And I think at the the upper levels, at the professional levels, they have access to such even better technology, right? That it's really going to help with strategies and make sports more exciting.
Yeah.
Also, video highlights have been democratized, both through social media. There's a little company that I'm involved with called WSC Sports. They're out of Israel, and they create and distribute video highlights all through using AI. This is work that at ESPN, we used to have an army of people to do. They do largely just with software. But what's amazing about it is, and I'll give you an example, at the Olympic trials recently, they armed the athletes themselves with highlights of their previous events in order to promote when their next event took place. If you begin to enable athletes themselves to distribute sports video highlights, you have a chance again of just really expanding the promotion and awareness of these things. And highlights, short form video is of increasing value to generations of sports fans.
And that's maybe just to add to what John just said. I think from a distribution point of view, enabling to get also athletes and players on board, it's just, if you look at social media followings and so on, I think it's not a secret that in the meantime, I think a lot of the players have much more following and kind of more engaged following compared to maybe some of the leagues or some of the clubs even. And I think using that and the power of it is just a huge opportunity, while I think at the same time keeping some level of control and consistency over it.
Yeah, quality, right, exactly.
Ensuring quality at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, you both make a great point. I can't think of a single athletic superstar I cover who doesn't have their own production arm right now, their own production company, who's working on a documentary, who's working on a film. What are some of the trends that you're seeing from your perspective? Because you're obviously bouncing around between different markets, of how fans are engaging. What are the most popular ways?
I think really the biggest thing for me is kind of, if we look at the economy of what we are in at the moment, I think it's very much driven by two things. The one is advertising, and the other thing is subscription and kind of direct payment models. And I think probably really the third thing that is now coming up more and more is also customers transacting and starting to transact directly in and around content. And whether it be, and this is also where I count betting in as one form of it, but it also could be e-commerce, different forms of e-commerce. And I think that's where a big opportunity, I think, sits for all of us, and actually us as Sportradar in supporting it, is to kind of enable that e-commerce so that it just doesn't feel weird and like a sale of something, but that it really feels part of the content and the experience in the end. I think that's where, also from a monetization standpoint, I think it's a huge opportunity for all of us.
Yeah. There was huge news yesterday in the NBA. TNT decided to match an offer from Amazon Prime Video for the NBA's media rights going into the 2030s and beyond. So my takeaway from what's going on with the NBA is they want to move towards digital and streaming and away from linear, particularly cable television. I'd like to ask the whole panel their take on it. Ty, starting with you, what do you see how AI and digital and the kind of information we're talking about will play a role in their media future as they likely end up with a Prime Video package?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're already seeing it, right, over the past few years with the increasing ability of broadcasters to get real-time insights and data pieces and viewpoints that we haven't seen before. And then as also the cost of production go down, I think we'll see more content distribution than ever before, and the ability of not just like the ATP tour to connect, but all the satellite tours and college tennis, non-revenue sports that isn't achievable right now.
Matt?
Yeah, I think, so Sportradar built all of our streaming apps, right? And so I'm thrilled that they have a chief AI officer, because there's so many opportunities that I'm looking forward to presenting to us in the coming years. direct-to-consumer subscription models are powerful because of the data you have, not just about the sport, but about the consumer, right? And so once you get somebody into your ecosystem, you should be following their behavior and trying to maximize their experience, and you're focused on lifetime value, et cetera. So in this sort of other area of the product on the back end, it's not just about like how you present the content, but really understanding that consumer behavior. When do you present content to them? When do you touch, how do you bill them effectively? There's a lot on that side, which, just very boring billing platform stuff where there's a lot of money to be made if you just do that more efficiently. So I think it's really about, it is a data-driven business, and that's the big differentiator, is you own that customer relationship. So I think that's where I think they see the value there too. That's what that's all about.
John, you're obviously an expert on the NBA, going back decades. What do you think?
I would just add that you're seeing sort of the hollowing out of their interest in cable. We'll see what happens with the Warner Brothers Discovery match, but let's, for argument's sake, say the match is not successful. They've really made their bet on broadcast for distribution and then streaming and working with partners like Radar to really further personalize that. The other thing I'd add is that behind the scenes, again, AI is a big factor. The NBA works with a little company called FastBreak.ai. And FastBreak basically does their schedule. So when you read about the in-season tournament and the Christmas Day games and all of this stuff, the modern schedule is itself now constructed all using artificial intelligence to try to figure out, to try to take a whole set of issues: travel, home date availability, appeal of the matchup on television, in order to make that happen.
Yeah. Pat, what do you think?
I think for me, the one thing that I really find outstanding, the way I observe kind of things in and around NBA, is really this appetite and this direction of trying out things in the end. So I think whether it's with us in the betting domain, but also in terms of other themed broadcasts, or John mentioned the example of short-form content, I think many of those things, I'm not sure if it's true to say it has been the first time they tried it out, but I think they've always been a kind of front runner in that space. And I think some of the result, and you can see there, and just the interest in and around this content in the end. And I think, I mean, there's probably many more reasons to why there's such an interest, but I think for me, really this appetite and this direction of trying out things in and around engagement and how to keep their fans, their punters engaged is really the one key thing that I find very, very, very good.
Yeah, I agree. And in my experience, the NBA has always been the most tech savvy and tech forward of the big 5 sports leagues.
But it is interesting, though, if you look at the NFL now, NFL has 7 partners. They work with Google. They work with, they have Amazon. They just did 2 Christmas Day games with Netflix. So they're following that lead, and they're going to be very, very aggressive, obviously.
Yeah. Matt, we were joking before the panel. Is that the new C-suite job that's going to be the hot job, the
Evidently,
Chief AI
it looks like
Officer,
it seems
along
like,
with CMO and CEO?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly feels like we need guidance, right? And it's refreshing to hear someone who actually knows how it works explain where the opportunities are, because there's so much hype, and I think we misconception around what it does and how it works, and even the name, intelligence, is something that's even a little bit misleading. So yeah, I think it certainly it feels like there's no end to the opportunities, and we're not quite big enough to have our own at Tennis Channel, but glad to have a partner that has one.
Do you see this playing a role in the studio shows that you mentioned before, John? The shoulder programming that has lately, in recent years, included gambling and betting lines and all that?
I just think you're going to see an explosion of different options, and it's going to be fascinating to see the ones that really resonate. You guys have the MBet platform. Studio shows today are largely programmed by Twitter, so I think that could be improved in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, listen, no, we got time for questions. We got a great panel. If anybody has any questions, please raise your hand. Yeah.
Maybe for Matt, how much time have you thought about the resources to actually train the model? Just know that there's some intricacies with tennis, the names, the rules, the nomenclature.
Yeah, I mean, I think look, I think that all of that is what makes tennis tough, but I think that's where the opportunity is. We have 20 years of 4,000 plus matches a year worth of data that's sort of waiting to be interrogated and translated. So it's a big undertaking, but we already, WSC, as we talked about earlier, is a partner we've talked to. They work with ATP Media, and they're already they've already made great strides in doing really quick turnaround highlights that are intelligent, that it does well, there I go using the word intelligent. Right. It does reflect the rules of the game, and so I think that my sense is that's pretty achievable, but I'm not an expert on the engineering.
Wasn't the old guard against Hawkeye and all that when they first brought that out?
Well, I have to say, I have like Patrick's comment earlier. I was born into the tennis world in 2023, so I come from scripted media. So
Right.
a lot of this is new, but yeah, I mean, I think tennis is one of those. It's got a number, as we talked about, a number of governing bodies. It is a very traditional sport in a lot of ways, and so incorporating these technologies, it's not like the NFL where you have sort of a centralized leadership that can make these big technical decisions and say, okay, this is what we're doing now, tournament by tournament, whether it's a slam or the men's or the women's tournaments, all have to sort of get in line, and that's it's sort of wrangling cats a bit.
In a polarized age, though, it's awesome to watch the thing and the players don't question it.
Right.
It's
made it. Yeah.
Yeah, they just accept the calls.
That's right.
Yeah. Another question? Yep.
I want to come back to the AI Al Michaels thing. It's one thing for Disney to use James Earl Jones' voice in perpetuity for Darth Vader, but what is the magic of a broadcaster? Like, it's not just Al Michaels' voice; it's his whole personality, all that. So, do you guys have any thoughts on how AI would contribute to that? Not just be the gimmick, like, oh look, you hear his voice, but it's more than just the voice of a broadcaster. It's not.
Well, I'll give you an example. I'm a huge Marv Albert fan. I grew up listening to Marv Albert do NBA games. He's older now. His voice isn't at the same place, but you can imagine spectacular announcers where you could capture, and sort of like a video game, you could spend time with them to get to their personalities. Yep. Al Michaels said in an interview that he was initially very skeptical, but wound up being very impressed with the final results. And he's a very demanding guy. So I think there's a lot of possibility with it. Again, the ability of the fan to choose the voice that you might want. We were discussing in the green room, there's a little company called Cam.ai that basically would take Al Michaels' face and his voice, but translate it into 140 different languages. We were discussing, how does one feel about that, but that's coming.
Yeah. Ty, what do you think?
Well, I was going to say, I think John said it earlier around personalization, that I think that's the real opportunity, that if you polled everybody in this room, you might get 1,000 different voices that you'd like to do the broadcast for you. And what AI does is allows that to happen, whereas in a world where you have to physically put somebody in front of a microphone and have them do everything out, it would just be too complicated. So I think that's really exciting because people are different and people have different points of views, and now this can all, everybody can kind of get their own personal experience.
But it's also then where the UX has to follow, because if you think about the example of having the option of having 100 different languages and voice and whatever, you have to have something which kind of already pre-selects and knows to some degree what you want, or does an estimation of it, because otherwise leaving a user to selecting from a menu of 100, it's not going to work. I mean, it's just getting you off the platform.
Right.
But also using AI, like for example, in the example of YouTube, using AI to find other talent creators who are really popular who you wouldn't know otherwise. You know, there's a sea of creators, but who are the most compelling tennis creators? That's knowable now in a way that never was before.
Yeah, I think that's, to me, I think that's a bigger opportunity, because I think in terms of, again, this is sort of broadly in terms of entertainment, people are choosing to spend their time based on who they want to hang out with, right? It's like, and so this notion of like recreating someone, an AI version of, do we want to, are we ready to hang out with robots yet?
Yeah.
Right? And I don't think most of us really are. But there are a lot of amazing voices, new voices all the time, and that's what, it's been this sort of very narrow funnel down to the announcer, or the 2 or 3 announcers on broadcast, and now suddenly we have the opportunity to have infinite announcers for the same piece of content. So how do you find those people, and how do you surface them and match them up with the right audience? That, I think, is really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, as a sports media columnist, I mean, I am absolutely the market for this. I mean, I have my favorites. I mean, to me, like watching the Masters every year, I love Vern Lundquist. I love listening to Vern Lundquist on the 16th hole. It's like putting on an old shoe, and you feel so comfortable. Ty, you were going to say something.
I was going to say, I think, isn't part of it, it shouldn't be lost, I think, with the highlights. Like, it's not just the voice. I think you're allowed to pick your personal highlights, and that will be delivered as a package, and that's actually like really exciting too, if you think about it. It's not just about the gimmick, but then the gimmick ties it all together, right? Where you can listen to, Vern do the play-by-play over the players that you want to see on the golf course.
Yeah.
So.
And I was thinking, the highlight versus the live, the magic of Al Michaels' Do You Believe in Miracles?
Right.
Is it the same when you have AI? And I guess that's a more philosophical.
Also, sports is global. We think about it from a U.S. standpoint. We're here. There's so much stuff that can be done in the sort of overnight hours that could be done better than it's done today.
Yeah. Another thing, wrinkle you're going to see in NBC's Olympics coverage is you're going to see basically a red zone type whip around show with all the highlights. Is anybody here a red zone fan? Absolutely love the red zone. So I think it's a fantastic idea for the Olympics to put that in there. What do you think, gentlemen? John, I'll
Just as
start
you
with
said,
you.
I mean, I think they're calling it the gold zone.
Yep.
I think it's a great idea, but in the NFL, we all know the teams, we all know the players. For it really to work well, NBC is going to have to be able to personalize, and spotlight the personality so that you really care. In the NFL, the beauty is between fantasy and betting, there's such a huge audience that's there. Every game matters.
Yeah.
So whip around format, I think, is super compelling, but some of it is going to be, do they create awareness so that if they're going to the water polo, you have some reason why that matters.
Yeah. And Ty, they got Scott Hansen, who's
Who's great.
who's the king of the whip around show, right? What do you think?
I was going to say, I wish everything could be red zone. I mean, that's my personal opinion. That I think, especially I'm a big NBA fan, and I'll sit on League Pass and just, when I have a moment, but jump around from game to game to see what's happening. And it's just, at the bottom line, it's around fans and being able to deliver, something compelling. That's engagement, like kind of the definition of it. So I think the more that technology can help deliver that to people, which is great. Which, by the way, like there's somebody on my team who's born in Boston and is a huge Boston sports fan, and that's all he wants to watch, which is great, right? But I think technology allows kind of like sports to meet everybody where they are.
Yeah. Matt, what do you think? Short attention span theater rules these days?
It's one new format, right? So yeah, it's great, but I think that on the other, so it's sort of reductive to think that everything's going that way, and of course, it is, our attention spans are challenged, but I'm also heartened. We have, on our product, we have the ability for some feeds, they have no commentary, only natural sound. And so people are streaming live tennis and it's very quiet for hours and hours, and it's just quiet and it's on and it's sort of immersive in this very sort of meditative way. So
Yeah.
that
And
was-
that's built for like new graphics and other ways of
Right,
of
right, to
automating it,
communicate, right,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's unexpected for me. I thought, wow, this is a totally unexpected way to, you think sports, it's frantic,
Yeah.
you're calling out the big plays and it's the big moments, but there are actually a lot of different sort of modalities for consuming sports that are surprising.
Pat, I'll give you the last word. What do you think?
I think for me, it's really about trying out things and also having the appetite and the attitude to do it in the end. And I think we just discussed so many different things that can be done in the round engagement. But in the end, it's all about doing it and trying it out. And maybe 5 of them will fail, but then
Yep.
there's the one thing that gives the incremental engagement. And I think this is kind of the way I would see things from my end.
And again, it highlights the growth of sports betting. I mean, if you're betting on the NFL or playing a fantasy league, that's what you're going to watch. Well, we're out of time, so please join me in a round of applause for a great panel. And Sportradar wants you to know that there's refreshments, food, drinks in the room right next door, and we're going to take a break and come back in a couple of minutes.
That was fun. So you were at YouTube.